Recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Solomon, as you wrote in your testimony, many booster collectives tend to steer NIL deals primarily to male colleagues athletes. Could you confirm for us whether this distribution is proportionate among men and women?
I would say that primarily the collectives are steering money towards football athletes over every other sport. And so that is disproportionately male as compared to female. I had someone explain a collective to me in, I thought, a very good way, and it was described as a fan club, and that these collectives basically operate at the behest of the coaches to direct funds to specific players that they sort of identify.
This is happening because booster collectives aren't regulated by Title IX, correct?
In part, I think that the collectives came about as a result of schools not wanting to deal with the funds because they were concerned about having to comply with Title IX, and this is sort of a workaround. I think the relationship is so closely knit at this point that Title IX should apply to collective funds.
So would you agree that booster collectives who coordinate closely with their school ought to be considered extensions of their school outright, and therefore subject to Title IX regulations?
Yes, collectives at this point effectively are extensions of the schools.
Ms. Solomon, some stakeholders worry that the predominance of social media influencing deals in the NIL market for women college athletes is incentivizing them to post suggestive content.
So I think that this is maybe a greater societal issue. I know that there are certainly athletes. It is an issue with female athletes feeling pressure to post certain types of posts that might gain more attention. I think that what that comes down to is a greater need for messaging around that and conversations with female athletes in particular about, I think, staying authentic, doing things that make you feel comfortable, not feeling pressured by an agent or anybody else. There are a lot of social media branding specialists that are encouraging athletes to do all sorts of things in social media. And I think it is becoming a pressure. And I think that schools should step in and kind of remind athletes that they should not feel added pressure to do those things. But again, I think females in society on social media feel the same pressure. I don't think that it's unique to female athletes at this point. So that's maybe a greater debate about whether we feel comfortable with, I think, the pressures on women in general to post certain posts on social media if that's not what they're comfortable with.
So race and sexual orientation play immense roles in this dynamic, as I see it. If there is a correlation between successful female NIL earners and more traditional race and sexual orientation identification.
So I think what you're asking is are they feeling pressured because they see the success of other people making money on social media? Certainly. And again, I will go back to, I think that's a greater pressure that content creators in general feel when they see things that are working for other content creators. And I think it goes back to athletes needing to be reminded to stay true to themselves, not to feel the pressure, to focus on their sports. But they're going to feel it. They're part of this new generation. They grew up in the social media world. It is a reality. They have a different mindset than we do when it comes to that. And so that has to be taken into consideration. But certainly I think that when anybody sees what someone else is doing as being successful, they're inclined to want to copy that.
Thank you. And you place great emphasis in your testimony upon the need to prioritize health, safety, and well-being for college athletes in any congressional action in this space. Can you explain why this is critical to the success of their NIL businesses?
Yes, if an athlete is being abused, if they're mentally suffering, just like any normal person in business, if they're not taking care of themselves and living a well-balanced life, being taken care of, their businesses are going to suffer. That they go hand in hand.
And based on your experience, can you tell me and the committee if colleges are putting resources into helping athletes?
I think that many schools are putting resources. I think there is a tremendous gap in the education, and I'll touch on my fellow panelists here. I think one of the ways that we can address some of the contractual issues and the agent issues is to educate about things to look for in contracts, what kind of practices to watch out for, and how to guard against them.
Thank you. I yield back.